Welcome back to AnglingBuzz Ice. I'm your host Jake Wallace, and it's finally starting to feel like winter around here. It's getting colder, our lakes are making more ice, and it's going to be a good couple weeks ahead of us. Right now we're looking for bluegills, and I'm on a big weed flat. And right now what I'm using to find the spot on the spot is my LakeMaster VX chip. This chip is great. It's got super great detail of points, humps, depressions, everything like that. It's got a great color palette that really shows you the in-depth shading of where, the depth changes are, and it just helps you get on more fish. And actually we've got a gill coming up here. If I can get him, I'll show you what I'm using. Got him, there we go. Oh, and he's doing the spins. Little gill, not a giant, but what we're after. Once I get him unhooked here, I want to show you this rod I'm using because it is a fantastic panfish rod. This is the St. Croix Tundra. It's a 34-inch. Light power with an extra fast action. And I love this Tundra series. It's got the high vis orange tip so you can detect those light bites. Got the recoil guides, so it's great. If you have ice build up there, you can just give it a flick, you're good to go. And that 34 inch is really nice because I can get away from the hole, and it's really comfortable to fish with either in a house or standing. And it's just a great bluegill setup, and it works for crappies too. Now we're going to be joining Mike Hehner as he shares some of his favorite presentations for bluegills.
All right, there's a good one. Sunfish like this are probably one of the most popular fish to catch ice fishing up here in the ice belt. Top 3 for sure. They're really good to eat, they're really fun to catch, but sometimes they can be very finicky. All right. So today we're going to go over a little Sunfish 101, if you will. We're going to talk about the different styles and kinds of baits you can use to catch these cool fish. Right, I'm out here today with my buddy Bill Linder. He's right over there manning the underwater camera. He was out here the other day with our good buddy Phil Lowby, who we also call Panfish Phil, and they found a really nice school of bluegills out on this central Minnesota lake we're on. So we're going to just move around, roam around here and see if we can find a few of these fish. One thing about sunfish, they can be very easy to catch when they're in a biting mood, but when they're not, you better have live bait. I would say 95% of the time when I go out sunfish fishing through the ice out here, I have to have live bait on my jigs. So as far as bait goes, today we brought along 2 kinds of bait. We've got waxworms and Eurolarvae or maggots. These are the most popular baits up here in this part of the country. And if you're sunfish fishing, you want to have these with you if you want to catch fish. So these days there's tons of baits you can use for fishing. For sunfish, I've broken it down into 4 categories. Horizontal baits, vertical baits, spoons, and soft plastics. Each one of them is effective in their own way. Let's take a look at all 4. First up would be horizontal jigs. These are by far the most popular jigs out there, probably the most variety of any of the presentations. The cool thing about horizontal jigs is when they're down in the water and they're rigged right, they hang perfectly horizontal and you can let them sit there right in front of the fish's face. Obviously these work best when they're tipped with some kind of bait like waxworms or Eurolarvae. Right here we have a handful of jigs that are kind of our favorites. First up, from Northland Tackle is the mud bug. Below that would be the gill getter. From Clam Tackle, we have the drop kick jig and the drop jig. And last but not least, from VMC, we've got the Mongo jig and a new one from that company, which would be the Larve Eye jig. All right, the second category would be vertical jigs. As it sounds, they hang vertically, unlike a horizontal jig. The benefit of these jigs is they have a different look to them, a different profile. So if you're fishing your horizontal jig and getting denied a lot by the fish, and they'll switch to a vertical jig. It looks differently, it has a smaller profile, and can be worked a little more finesse. Here's a couple of our favorites. From Northland Tackle, the forage jig, and from Clam, the half ant. Okay, the third category would be spoons, and spoons are relatively newer to the bluegill scene, at least for people using them. They're more thought of as a crappie or a walleye bait, but a lot of companies are making spoons in that 16th to 32nd, even 64th ounce size. So, you know, you have to keep in mind bluegills do not have giant mouths, so you can't have too big of a spoon. So these spoons are designed really small, and they're fished best, again, with a couple maggots or a waxworm on them. From the top, we have the Clam Pinhead Pro. The middle would be the VMC Bull Spoon, and the bottom would be the Northland Forage Minnow Spoon. All three of these are a great size for catching bluegills. And last of all is soft plastics. From my experience, they're not as effective on sunfish as they are on crappies, but if bluegills and sunfish are biting really well, soft plastics work all right. Typically, you would want to use a smaller size, again, for their small mouths. The three we have listed here that are really good ones, on top is the Northland Mayfly, in the middle is the Clam Jamie Plastic, and the third is the VMC Nymph Jig. Now all three of these can be fished horizontally, and the plastics they make these days are very realistic, soft and supple, and have a lifelike action. So if you want to try something different for sunfish when you're not catching them on other stuff, then try a soft plastic. There we go, that's another good sunfish. Well, that was a lot of information to process, but hopefully the next time you go out sunfish fishing, this will help you decide what baits you might want to try next.
Come here, buddy. Now, all those presentations work great for bluegills, and you got to make sure you have each one of them because there's a time and place for each. But the one thing you do have to remember when you're fishing for bluegills is you have to slow your jigging cadence down. Let this guy go here. Bluegills aren't like crappies. They really like to inspect the baits, and if you're working your bait too fast, you're not going to get them to bite. Now, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Good luck and stay safe out on the ice.